All right, so today for the presentation, we're going to be talking about the ESPN mobile phone and why it failed, which was mainly caused by ESPN's poorly thought out pricing scheme, a weak understanding of what their consumers wanted, and then their attempt to be their own wireless carrier. So, a little overview of the presentation. We're going to start by talking about the product itself and kind of what it was all about. Then, we're going to go into the three main reasons why the phone failed, and then we'll finish it off with the lessons learned by ESPN and what they moved on to in the future after the phone was discontinued. So, about the product itself, it was released in 2006. It was meant to be the new dominant phone in the phone market. So, ESPN made it as a flip phone with a 2.2-inch screen and a 1.3 megapixel camera, which was very standard at the time for the industry. It was made fully out of plastic, and it only had the phone features of being able to call and then take photos. There was no other features that you could get out of the phone besides ESPN's big selling point, which was it was to offer live sports and video highlights instantaneously to their customers. However, because it wasn't really a full functioning phone, it didn't get a lot of traction in the market and was discontinued less than a year after it was released. The biggest issue for ESPN with the phone was its pricing. So it started at a cost of around $300, and then depending on what tier of subscription you wanted, there was a monthly fee of anywhere from $65 to $225, which was a huge price at the time. The other thing about the phone, it was really hard to get. ESPN didn't make a lot of the phones, so it was really hard to get your hands on. And the way they sold it was mainly online and through Best Buy. So customers didn't really get to see the phone before using it or before purchasing it. So it kind of was a red flag for customers. They would rather have the phone in hand before purchasing. So it created kind of a lack of interest and a lack of sales, which led to a huge loss of money for ESPN. I think it was upwards to around $150 million at the time. So the other big issue for ESPN was the consumer market they were trying to attract. Um, Customers wanted a phone that could do everything the phone they had at the time could do. So because this phone could only call, take photos, and then had the ESPN feature, it wasn't really a phone that could function on a daily basis. So if customers were to buy the phone, they'd still have to keep the current phone they had, which meant they'd have to carry around two phones, pay for two phones, pay for two wireless services. So it definitely lost interest because of that alone. Um, Other on top of that, there was no other big new feature that the phone offered. It was a very standard phone in the market. It just had less of an actual phone feature and more of just ESPN's live sports. So it led to a very little amount of sales and customers just siding towards brands they had already known at the time, which were brands like Nokia and Samsung, who were already dominating the market. The next big mistake ESPN made is they didn't partner with any other wireless carrier who were dominating at the time. They decided to create a new wireless carrier, which was later named Sprint. They used this and combined it with the phone that they were releasing. So if a customer were to buy the phone, they would have to use this wireless carrier. They couldn't use any other carrier that they were already using at the time, like a Verizon or a T-Mobile, which led customers who were wanting to switch over to have to pay a huge fine because of the contracts they had with their current service. On top of that, ESPN really didn't have any idea what they were doing when it came to this market. So after the phone was released, there was a lot of issues with the service itself, but ESPN had no customer support, they had no technical support, and they kind of just left customers stranded to try to figure out issues themselves. So it steered a lot of customers away and led to no sales in the market and was kind of the big reason why the phone was discontinued. One of the big things ESPN did after the phone was discontinued is they had taken a step back. They got out of the phone market, they got out of the wireless carrying market, and they really looked into seeing what customers wanted. They had noticed there was a big interest for live sports and video highlights. So they actually moved more towards mobile apps and web pages that could work with the phones and the brands that were already dominating the phone market. So instead of trying to control the market, they just partnered with the phone industry itself and focused more on what they were like experts in, which was the sports broadcasting market. And with the help of other phone brands, they created a an app that was compatible with phones on the market at the time, which gave customers the live sports and the highlights that they wanted instantaneously. And it still allowed ESPN to make money as they sold it to phone brands, and they still offered a smaller subscription fee for customers who wanted more features. So this was the big step that ESPN took after the phone was discontinued, which led them to the company they are today, led them to be very successful and a multi-billion-dollar company. So the phone itself was a failure, but it overall gave ESPN the idea to move towards this market, which led them to who they are today. So overall, it created ESPN to be a successful company. And then here are some of the references that and articles of some of the facts that are used throughout the presentation. And that's all I've got. Thank you.